Ready, my friend. So now I'm going to formally start the interview. My comrade, Yugopnik, thank you so much for taking the time and accepting the invitation to have this conversation. I have to confess, I have been a long-time follower of your video essays. They're super cool. Some of them are extremely shareable. I've even been tempted to translate them into Spanish because I believe they are so much valuable and a lot of people should see them. So I thank you so much for having the opportunity, my friend. I hope you have a good time with this conversation.
Oh, I'm sure I will. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for inviting me on. It's an absolute pleasure. I've also been a fan of your work. I think what you do is very important, and let's have a nice conversation and hopefully share something relatively interesting with your lovely audience.
I'm sure we're going to have plenty of topics. So for the people that don't know you, do you mind taking a couple of minutes to speaking about yourself, like where you're from, how you started creating content, your political position, if you're willing to say that, or your philosophical background? That would be awesome.
Yeah, why not? So, yeah, hi everyone. I'm Yugopnik, a part-time propagandist for the socialist cause over on the YouTube with my own channel as well as the Deprogram podcast, and part-time, corporate sellout during my day job. I'm from the dynamic, putting it lightly, region of the world called the Balkans. And I mostly make work on capitalist disillusionment, fascist doctrine, I don't know, the ideological nature of things, as we joked with Diego before the stream started, and so on and so on. But yeah, I'm glad to be here. I started my YouTube journey, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. After that, I started collaborating with two comrades that at this point I'm calling brothers, JT from Second Thought and Hakim from Hakim, the channel. The podcast has really been growing, and it's been an amazing sort of experience. I encourage anyone who's relatively interested in what we're talking about here to check it out. The original reason why I started the channel as a whole was because I was disillusioned by capitalism as a whole. When I was much younger, I thought, because I'm coming from a part of the world where socialism, to one extent or another, has been previously tried, and in order to completely destroy the class consciousness that was kind of available as grassroots on the ground here in Eastern Europe in general. The anti-socialist propaganda here was arguably the most intense anywhere on planet Earth, because it needed to be rooted out, not only not allowed to root in, but completely rooted out.
Right.
And I grew up, in public education, learning a particular image that most of us are very familiar with when it comes to how previous socialist experiments were defined, and not only that, how socialism as a philosophy, as a social movement, an economic movement, was shown to me. I was privileged enough, I guess I can call it, even though it sucked balls, to go to the United States on this like work and travel, whatever fucking program. So I got to, for 4 months, actually experience what this American dream really was like. I was around 18 at the time. I worked the most classical working class jobs in restaurants, on construction, as a clerk, yeah. Also in shops, like everything that you can imagine, that a kid that works 12, 13 hours in order to make good money so that they can go back home and spend it on uni or whatever. But there I got to actually see how people live. I got to see extremely hardworking people needing 2 or 3 even jobs in order to pay off of their mortgage. I saw absolutely everyone flashing their consumer objects without actually owning them, because absolutely everything is on fucking credit. I saw the way the workers were treated, etc., etc. You get the fucking drift. So then I realized, okay, this fucking capitalism thing really is not for me. I was lucky enough to be studying political science. I'm proud of that one. The other, business administration, my other major, makes me cringe deep inside of my soul for having chosen it. But everybody's gotta eat. So yeah, I thanks to the political science formal education, I guess I was introduced to Marxism, even though the first professors that kind of introduced me to this field, I guess, of thought, were very, anti-Marxist, like in most universities they are.
Yeah.
But it just really, really clicked with the previous experience that I've had over there. It really, really clicked with the hundreds and hundreds of stories from my grandparents, which were saying very, very positive things about, while critiquing them as deservingly so, but also very positive things about the previous socialist experiments that existed in Eastern Europe. But they always, didn't listen to these old quacky stupid people, because
Yeah.
teenagers are like that. So that the stories from my grandparents, the actually being able to formally get introduced in Marxism, and the complete disillusionment with capitalism, because I got to go and see the richest country that has ever existed in human history, this utopia that I've seen in all of the Hollywood movies, with the flashy cars and the hot chicks, ending up being a complete shithole, to be perfectly honest. That combination of those three things, I guess, leads to pretty decent amount of radicalization. And then afterwards, when I actually started working in the corporate world, that on top of that mixed, and you get the person that really feels like they need to do something about the system. So I used whatever tools I had at my disposal, and that is, writing, philosophical education, and spreading the idea, which I guess I do use my business degree to an extent, the marketing part of it at least. And yeah, sorry for rambling on. That's basically
No, it's perfect.
TV.
No, that's awesome, and I have so many topics I wanna touch upon. I will leave actually the first one I wanted to talk about what you mentioned. I will leave for the last, because I think it leads into more specific and more deeply philosophical topics that I think it will be nice for us to discuss. That you describe yourself as a propagandist, or part as the Soviet propaganda, let's say, okay. But I want to start with this notion that, so do you feel like everyone needs to have an in-hand, more philosophical term, an incarnated phenomenology of alienation to actually relate to Marxist ideas? Or can people understand alienation and discover they are alienated to begin with by being exposed to propaganda, video essays, theory, critique of ideology? Like, do I need to work in the capitalist industry in order to understand this feeling of alienation? Or can I hear about it and actually discover that I was always alienated?
That is a phenomenal question, and the answer might not be satisfactory, but the answer is depends. Certain types of people just need to experience something on their own skin in order for them to be disillusioned by what has been sold to them as a great system. If we're talking about capitalism in particular, depending on just how ideologized you were while you were growing up, or not even while you were growing up, throughout your life, up until that experience
Particular
point
moment, yeah.
breaks the illusion. You might need, as we said, we might need the experience of it in order for you to get
Radicalized.
again, scary word, but there you go, you use it. While for other people who are lucky enough, I guess, or sometimes, okay, God bless, intelligent enough, wise enough, I don't know, but all of that then depends, most of it, on our direct environment. So it goes back to how lucky you were when it comes to how you were raised ideologically. If you aren't as brainwashed as, for example, I was, you probably could get into it by just reading, or by stumbling upon a video or a book or a nice conversation in a pub, etc., etc. But if you're really fucking into it, that's the point. That is the point with especially capitalist ideology, why it is so fucked up, because when you are a socialist or even a fascist or whatever, an anarchist, you define that as your ideology. You define that as the wider social movement or group that you belong to. But when you believe in capitalism or even support capitalism, you just think that you're supporting the natural state of being. You don't feel it as an ideology.
Correct.
So it's much more difficult to get out of it, because you don't really think there's something to get out of. You think this is reality, this is unchangeable, this is absolute fact. So that's why experience sometimes is very important. But other people come to it either spontaneously or through formal reading or information sources, etc., etc. So yeah, answer is, I guess, depends. What do you think?
It depends. So I think it's a very interesting analysis that you propose. Like to begin with, I love this notion, and it's important to remind people that even the definition of the word hegemony or hegemonic, what people mean most of the time when they use the word hegemonic is a notion that has been naturalized as unchangeable and from a natural order. And I think most of the capitalist ideology is hegemonic because people confuse it with a natural order. It's like we have arrived at a point in history where we observe a soccer game and we think that the nature of human beings is to play soccer. And this is in a way how we grow up to feel that capitalist ideology, productivity, this notion of profit as an end in itself, the instrumentalization of human nature and other resources by the ends of extending the profit, the productive motive, has been naturalized. And it works as a naturalized version of our notion of reality. And this is when ideology becomes truly dangerous, when it's not self-identified as ideological. I think nothing is more ideological than those that sell themselves as non-ideological creatures.
Yeah.
Right. So those that think of themselves as outside of ideology are completely swallowed by ideology. So then again, just to play a devil's advocate here, Hugo, and I want to actually save this question because there was a nice question in the chat that I'm going to go back through, and is that. So how does and of course it's a tricky question in the sense that I know the answer, but I want us to help the public understand how does this differs from the science, if you want, or from the tradition of dialectical materialism or historical materialism. How is not non-ideological as a method?
Could you repeat the question?
Sorry. So if a naturalized understanding of natural processes and human behavior is considered ideological, because in a way is a subjective interpretation of occurring phenomena that we tend to naturalize because this is what we have been exposed as the regular order of things. So how is the materialistic tradition not non-ideological?
Well, it is not necessary. Okay, so depending again on how we define
ideology.
The ideology in itself, but the way dialectical materialism and materialism in general differentiates itself from liberal philosophy, or if you could even call that conservative philosophy, Jesus Christ, is because it roots all of its arguments not in some sort of metaphysical understanding of what is real and what is not. It does not root it in just ideas which then create the world around them, but it roots itself in the material reality on the ground, which then molds individuals because they are adapting to the material world, the system, the economic model, whatever you want to call it, that exists. And therefore, when a Marxist critique of particular ideology or ideology in general, or capitalist hegemony, or whatever class interaction exists between two particular classes, it bases that not on an idea that is thrown out of thin air just because you were wise enough to think it up. It does not base it upon something that many quasi-intellectuals would like to call human nature or whatever. It bases it on the completely purified, completely direct analysis of the physical world, of what we see in front of us. It looks at why the progress of all time periods is based on class conflict because of X, Y, Z, because we can see it. Why is the profit motive, directly or indirectly, stealing from one class and giving to another because of argument A, B, C, D, E, F, G? It is the materialist term, which is thrown around all the time, but at the end of the day is not as complicated as people think it is when they start getting into Marxism, is the main thing that differentiates it from liberal philosophy, because it absolutely never, ever, ever stops, never makes an argument unless it is based in very verifiable shit that fucking exists, quite literally.
So the enemy is idealism.
It always, unfortunately, is. Yes.
Yeah, I tend to agree with your response, and I think it's important for people listening to this to be on the watch out, because in the end, I think even some of the leftist movements around the world right now are falling into an idealistic use of traditional of the more traditional grounded based material analysis, and this is where I think the left is at its weakest. This is where I think like a lot of progressive movements tend to be outside of the school when they flirt with idealistic notions or idealistic moral decisions or utopias or intentions. And this is what is very hard. I think one of the things that people struggle the most with is how come communism as a tradition is not, let's say, designing a potential future. Well, it will be completely counterintuitive and it will make no sense with the material transition to actually predict the future, because as a relationship between material bases and ideal superstructures only emerge when the material superstructure changes. So it's impossible for us to predict political organizations or social movements or the notion of equality, moral or injustice or whatever in the future if the material bases themselves have not changed. What we can do is we can analyze the material conditions of today and the past and make like you said a based analysis
prediction,
and then we can discuss about that. But it's very hard for us to make predictions or to make judgment calls or to moralize or even to work with essentialism and to say that words themselves has an essential charge that is going to be able to guide us or produce a direction that is unambiguous for us to follow to the future. Having said that, Hugo, there's a question on the chat that I think is nice for us to touch upon. It's from a guy called Electric Dragula. It's calling greetings. I'm curious if Hugo had any encounters with Leviathan. And I'm curious if Diego known of any right-wing groups masquerading as animal protection organizations in the neck of the woods. Kisses Brothers. What is your take on this?
Yeah, it's not. It's so funny. Like there's this far right group in the Balkans which camouflaged its growth by pretending that they're animal rights protectors. But it was very interesting how they were only protecting animals from minorities, how they would use the mistreatment by, two guys in a particular neighborhood that's very poor to beat the shit out of 50-60 people in that particular neighborhood, etc., etc. And they've grown in popularity recently because a lot of people that have only heard about them as an animal rights group tend to support them and even give them money, while the other group that understands and knows that they are just quite literal neo-fascists gives them money for that other reason, and the two groups never interact. So that allows them to grow because they have pretty decent, pretty smart PR. But it lasted for a few years. At one point, you wear too many fucking swastikas and white power symbols, and you get too many high or drunk interviews where you say super fucked up shit. But the funniest part is that the leader of this group, which is not only fascistic but really romanticizes Nazism even.
Oh my God.
The leader's grandpa was one of the biggest partisan freedom fighting communists in ex-Yugoslavia that was fighting the Nazis, and the guy was also a Jew, and now this fucking guy beats up Roma people for horses and Mikhails. It's you never know what your great grandchildren are gonna turn out to be like.
What a disaster! And do you think the word Leviathan is related in any way to this Hobbesian idea of the Leviathan, and in a way is related to bioethics, or not really?
Oh no, my friend!
No,
these guys aren't that smart. No.
Okay. I thought maybe it's a bioethical intention with some eugenetics mixed in the middle, and these guys are even willing to go to the extent of extending that argument. But no, I'm having crazy dreams.
You are having crazy dreams. They just said, "Man, that fucking sounds so cool, man! Like Leviathan."
It's someone from Final Fantasy.
Yeah. We're like, yeah. Quite literally.
It's insane. So having touched into that topic, which I think one is very nice. Currently in Latin America, we are overflown by these right wing think tanks, especially libertarian think tanks, and I think it's actually cool for us to interact and compare the situations because, as you were mentioning, and I think this is a really cool conversation to have about. These Red Scare or these anti-communist propaganda being at different stages of development in different parts of the world, right? Where in Latin America, we have this proliferation of right-wing influencers promoting anarcho-capitalism and libertarianism, Hayek, von Mises, Rothbard, and all these really niche, crazy, fucked up writers that had like very little ethics and very little love for human people and a lot of love for money and sucking boots out of Nazis. And we have a lot of those think tanks in Latin America right now. And how do you compare this situation that we have in Latin America, what you currently have in the Balkans?
Oh, very, 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 very similar. The only kind of difference might be that they have established themselves as mainstream parties and understood that
Wow.
that they do not necessarily need to go as far right in order to keep the status quo the way it is, because they've had a lot of practice and basically unilateral power ever since 1989 and 1990s. A lot of the socialist and communist parties that were overthrown had the potential back when capitalist electoralism and federalism returned to the countries, they would have immediately gotten reelected. So the West, especially if we're talking Central and Southern Europe, the European Union invested ridiculous amounts of money in funding their versions of parties that already exist in Western Europe in most Balkan countries and Central European countries. So, for example, the Christian Democratic Party, Merkel's party, established its own version in many of the local regions. Obviously, a lot of very, very far-right movements, but erupted as well. But in the Balkans, you can't really sell classical libertarianism to anyone, because no matter how even reactionary a particular person is, the 50, 60 years of life in socialism has established a sort of hatred towards the boss, hatred towards the landowner,
The master.
the master. So the idea that the free market is going to, solve all our problems is usually reserved for extremely privileged, rich boys that like to act smart in the cafe or the bar. But the more classical approach of blood of our people is greater than everyone else's. We deserve our territory to be 3 times bigger. There is inherent superiority in our gene pool or our culture or whatever, or our religion. In the Balkans, that's a big thing. That's the main divisive factor. Still exists big time, and in almost every Balkan country, even have quite a decent amount of seats in parliament, while the left has almost none. So yeah, the right exists big time, and it's very mainstream. Sometimes it's very independent, right? And it actually follows through on its ideological goals.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's a perfect stooge for whatever the main party, which usually is just follows whatever it needs to in order to make more money. Uses them as a sort of mechanism to show the West that, look, we're not a unilateral country with only one party. We have these 3-4 other ones that are like super cool. And usually the right wingers, not usually right, usually left wingers will never agree to this, right? To just be a stooge, while a fascist, sometimes I would even argue wisely, knows that you should take you take every single thing you can, you claw to power, and eventually you use it to
seize
grow
the means of production.
Yeah, but for them to seize the means of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So oh my God, man, it's hard because there's so many divergent topics of conversation that I would like to have your take, but let's go step by step. So first thing, I'm Brazilian originally. Even if I'm based in Mexico right now, I was born in Brazil. I have a Brazilian passport. I spent half of my life at least in Brazil, and currently we almost had neo-fascist coup d'etat yesterday in Brasilia, which is a fucking nightmare because just as Hegel predicted and then Marx made it even better, first as farce and first as tragedy and then as farce, we had our own version of January 6th, and
I saw.
It's a pity, because the issue is that I think like most of these reactionary right-wing groups, even if they don't necessarily identify themselves as right-wings, they end up capturing this hard voting power from some people. Like, for example, they take this resentment, like master resentment, and they will take it as an anarcho alternative. And most of anarcho, let's say, sympathizants or people that are willing to talk about anarchism or lesser government or smaller government, they will even endorse the freedom of the market just because it comes packed as an anarcho alternative, And this is what I find really effective, at least in Latin America. What they're transforming is that they're transforming their resentment from corruption, and they're redirecting the resentment from corruption into an anti-government ideology, and this feeds directly into neoliberalism.
Yeah, it's really smart, and it goes back to even pre-World War II anti-working class movement rhetoric. You idealize the state as the representation of everything that is slowing down potential progress. Then, if, for example, the market starts going down, you blame it on
the government.
You blame it on too much corruption, blah, blah, blah. You know everything I'm going to say, and probably the audience does as well. But the co-identification of the state with socialism is an age-old tactic, and it works really well. But now, as you very wisely said, they are doing it also in the opposite direction, and they're using it to propagate their own ideas forward instead of just the usual Cold War approach of dissuading the other guy. And government is such a perfect scapegoat to use, as it is untouchable, far away thing, this thing that ironically connected to our previous conversation, that you really do ideologize. The government feels kind of weirdly unnatural, but your 9 to 5, because you've always been seeing everybody do the 9 to 5, you do not see as ideological. The going to work, the boss taking, depends on the country, but between 90 and 70% of what you make him and pays you much less. That just feels, how many times have we heard people say, why the fuck am I paying taxes? I'm not getting anything out of it.
Yeah.
But then never, ever, ever, ever think about, why the fuck did I just make 50K for my boss, whatever currency, and he paid me 4K? No, it's literally same, worse taxation.
Yeah, much worse.
But because we're ideologizing government, the state, whatever the fuck, or particular parties, which I think we're at this stage now, it starts, the rhetoric completely changes, and at this point you don't even have to quite literally believe in like even conservative values, hate the gays and stop the abortions and all that shit. You can start identifying with the Republican Party, for example, in the United States, because it pitches
taxation is theft.
Yeah, but it also pitches to a group like, we are not government. We are
anti-establishment.
Guys. Yeah, exactly. And it used to be that the left could utilize anti-establishment rhetoric, and we were kings at this fucking shit. But now the right really has caught up, and you end up having like the unfortunate event of yesterday. I watched like 100 videos of I don't want to sound ableist, but literally insane motherfuckers really thinking that they're doing something over there. And at the end, they're just going there and recording with their phones and hoping that the military chooses their side.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's just so incredible. How did you feel as a Brazilian watching that on TV? It's probably fucking scary at first, but then you see the idiots in
It's sad. It's sad. Yeah. It's my feeling is that I'm actually gonna do a full afternoon live review, like reading the tweets, and I'm gonna react to the discourse from the Brazilian President Lula. But it's mostly sad, to be honest with you, because most of them are like retired people. Most of them are retired people. It's insane. Like the average age of Bolsonaro supporters is above 55 in Brazil, which is very, very sad because they're very politically active. They have a lot of free time. They spend all their days watching memes and sharing fake news via WhatsApp and Facebook. And they're they have meme brains. Like their brains are full of memes. That's it. Their notion
But
of
they
reality.
weren't prepared. But they weren't prepared for the memes, so it melted their brain. I have a literal grandpa. A grandpa, I love him, but he thinks the Jews are taking over the world.
Yeah.
He thinks they're eating pedophiles are eating babies.
Yeah.
He thinks that the apocalypse is coming when like a black pope comes and there's like these people with red hats that rule shit. And then when he watches the pope and there's three guys with red hats instead of it's a whole fucking thing. But this guy, his living room used to be a literal library, and it still is. This man was so wise. And the internet literally just fucked him up.
Yeah, rot his brain.
Because he grew up on, yes, not every book equals truth. Not everything you read is true. But at least back then, pre-internet, it was a filter because you needed to kind of get published, right? You needed it to get distributed, blah, blah, blah. So it limited at least a bit the amount of misinformation.
Oh my God, Hugo, they're gonna call you an authoritarian dictator because you're against free speech, my man. And I agree with you. Gulag for fake news and propagandists from the fascist groups.
Absolutely, it's fucking this poor. I'm using it as an example, and it's very sad. We get into fights every time I go to see and talk to him. He's still a very kind man, but because he genuinely believes this. He's like, man, like, dude, we should be scared, man. They're gonna come and
brain rot. It's completely brain rot.
Yeah.
And you know what is very, very sad to me, and this is on a very personal note. I'm gonna say this in English right now and then in Spanish in the afternoon for my crew. But it's sad because I have a lot of family members that are being kidnapped, and I have to use the word. They have been kidnapped by this ideology that doesn't defend and does not reflect their best interests, and it's fucking insane. What I find absolutely insane about this is that they end up defending a political position that goes completely against their class interests, completely against their day-to-day basic necessities, and they still defend it as if it was a matter of life and death. But what is crazy to me is that these guys are like, oh my God, Lula is a communist. And I'm like, no, I wished. Like, you guys have no idea. Like, I'm a real communist, and he's not. Like, I fucking wish he was, but he's so far. Like, he's a reformist. He's going to negotiate with banks. And I think, and again, taking from Lenin, it's much easier for us to do the class battle from a social democracy than from a fascist authoritarian regime. So in that sense, I'm going to vote for Lula every time. Even if I didn't vote for him on the first time, I vote for the Communist Party of Brazil from number 13, which is Sofia Manzato, great candidate. But then after that, when they go to the second turn, and in Brazil we have 2 rounds, right? In the second round, we only have the 2 most voted candidates. And the election was between Bolsonaro and Lula. Of course I'm going to vote Lula. I'm not insane. It's much easier for us to fight the ideological and the proletariat battle and fight from the interests of the working class from a social democracy than it is from a fascist regime. So of course it makes sense. But he's far, far, far away from what I wish from a even socialist government. He's super retired. But these guys, you cannot move them away from that ideological position. And I'll even go to the extent where I'll take my time on Sundays and I'll explain to them what is our interest, what is the meaning of neoliberalism, what is the meaning of liberalism, what had the left has done for working class people in the history of the country, what battles we have won, what would happen if the liberal ideology actually took place and took control of the economy of Brazil, how we will affect their lives immediately, and they will agree to everything. It's insane. And they're like, oh my God, yes, Diego, if only I had all this information on a day-to-day basis. And then 5 minutes after that, they will find another meme and they will pivot right back to the original position.
Yeah. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Because they can attach to absolutely everything. They can attach to like an individual that they really don't like. That calls themselves a leftist. Therefore, all leftism fucked up. They can attach themselves to a historical event in which we screwed up in one way or another, and then based on that, they cannot be leftist. We all have like 100 friends, especially for Marxists, and compared to right wingers that have no friends usually.
Yeah, and no girlfriends, which is even more painful. Yeah,
Yeah,
poor
absolutely,
guys.
absolutely.
Yeah, poor guys.
State mandated girlfriends for everyone when communism comes.
If only, yeah.
Nah, some of you, even in, I don't know, a fascist patriarchal men only society, will still not get any, you know what.
Oh my
But,
God! I'm so happy to say that there's plenty of studies that prove that women had much more orgasms in the socialist side of Germany than they had on the right side of Germany. So I just want to remind you guys that it's a political and historical fact. It's not opinions here. We're not judging anyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it's easy. Like, this is a cliche, but right-wing ideas are much easier to spread because they are so incredibly basic, so easy to attach to problems, and they offer solutions which to the base instinct of somebody that is already engaged in the brain rot of neoliberalism and liberalism can easily jump on board with. And no matter how much great info, for example, you sit down, you talk to your cousins or friends, no matter how much great info you give them, 2 or 3 funny videos of stupid SJW gets dunked on will immediately put them right back into the previous point of view.
There's an interesting comment here. I normally don't have that many trolls in the chat, but there's a comment here that I find trolling but interesting. There's a writer, I suppose, called Raymond Aron that says Marxism is the opium of intellectuals. I've never heard this sentence before in my life. I'm organically reacting to it as something that sounds upfront very, very stupid, because I think it's a play in this Marxist notion that religion is the opium of the people,
The masses, yeah.
opium of the masses, and now he's saying Marxism is the opium of intellectuals. It sounds like an anti-intellectualist posture, no? It sounds like a very, very, very meme opinion.
I know you should not debunk things with examples,
Yeah.
but I am an absolute imbecile, and Marxism is my opiate. So, no, it works on dumb motherfuckers too. Nah, it's selling Marxism as anything except a working class movement makes absolutely no sense, because Marxism, at the end of the day, wants to establish a alternative society in which only workers will benefit, and then because of that, the extrapolation of that material world will benefit everyone in the long run, etc., etc., etc. But like, what do intellectuals get? Like, you have academic circle jerks fucking all over the place in capitalism. They don't need socialism. Hell.
It's so strange because it feels like this notion that it's anti-intellectual. I mean, I understand we have to be even dialectical critical of the Marxist tradition. In that sense, I agree 100%. Like I'm also against the dogmatic Marxists that don't. Let's say as Marx did. Like, you have to be able to apply the dialectical tradition or the dialectical science, if you're willing to go that far. And you have to be able to apply it to current material conditions. And that makes a lot of sense. We also have to be able to challenge our own presuppositions in order to keep our tradition relevant to current aspects of reality. But to go that far as to be anti-intellectual and say that philosophy has been kidnapped, or to say that academia is just because it's complicated and inaccessible, it is elitist and bourgeois. I mean, I understand that aspect of the critique as well, but I wouldn't reduce it to being anti-intellectual. I don't know if you agree with the point.
I do completely. It's we don't only do it with intellectualism or with, for example, great example, academia. We a lot of socialists very freely and kind of even sometimes willingly give whole aspects of, and play the Joker sound behind me, society over to the right, or to capitalists, or even to the far right. For example, I don't know, it's just things that come off the top of my head, like classical music is fucking bourgeois,
opera is bourgeois.
Like Adorno.
Liking a nice fucking car with 500 horsepower is bourgeois, is over pompous consumerism. Wearing a fucking gold chain or liking watches is bourgeois. We are literally giving everything that most people like, at least one of these things, over to capitalists. So tomorrow I would not even be surprised when I'm telling people, man, check this socialism thing out, and he's like, yeah, man, that's cool, but like I like owning 2 cars and I like gold watches. And I'm like, yeah, that's okay. He's like, no, man, this one motherfucker told me I'm a piece of shit capitalist for liking watches. What? We're just handing everything over to, like, these are not ideologically capitalist things. They while not existing in a vacuum and while maybe being consumed at a larger extent by the ruling class, which happens to be the bourgeois in this case, which happens to have enough money to do those particular things, that is a problem of capitalism not spreading those particular experiences to most people. It's not a problem of those experiences in general existing. The experiences aren't the problem. People not having access to those experiences is the problem. But fucking academics are bourgeois. Fucking, I don't know, putting a jacket on your dog when it's cold outside is fucking bourgeois. Because a real proletarian dog will
suffer the
die
cold.
Of cold.
Yeah, exactly.
It's suffering, and also the fetishization of poverty in general. Oh man, I'm so better than you right now because I don't have anything to eat.
This vowel of misery. It feels like that for me is a very dogmatic critique of Marxism, and in a way, it's of course a straw man. It's a reductionism of the Marxist tradition, having to say that, oh my God, if you're a Marxist, why don't you give your stuff away, or like why do you use it's fucking ridiculous. I know that's people are meme heads like most of the time, and I'm not talking only about people that are actual meme heads. A lot of Marxist critique is also meme. It's also memistic in the sense that it doesn't take seriously the Marxist tradition. This notion of Marx was not necessarily egalitarian. Like he said, to each according to his need, from each according to his ability. Yeah. That's an anti-egalitarian statement, and it was further developed. You can even go far and say that Marx was a capacist. Like he was judging. He was and in the Soviet Union. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you don't work, you starve.
Yeah,
I mean, but then again, most of the people have this memistic opinion about Marx, and they it's very easy to criticize something when you have a memistic opinion from it. But Hugo, if I may take you in a different direction, and this is a topic I wanted to touch with you before we close, and I don't wanna take too much advantage of your time, and I'm taking the opportunity to tell everyone on the crowd that we're gonna be having a conversation on a Deep Program podcast.
Yeah,
that is a podcast from Hugo, Second Thought, and
Hakim.
And Hakim, of course, another great content creator, by the way. Send my regards. Both of them, as you are, brilliant content creators that everyone on the chat will go and check out and follow. And I'm going to having a conversation with this guy this week and probably going to be releasing soon. So I'm going to leave on the description of the video the links to other accounts and their Twitter handles and whatnot, so you guys can follow them and see. But switching the conversation to a slightly more interesting place than meme opinions. What's your current take, and give us your point of view, because we receive a lot of propaganda about the topic as well, about the currently ongoing Russia versus Ukraine conflict?
Oh, it's a very well documented, very talked about, very massive event that everybody and their mom have an opinion on, I guess. But to me, if we go down to the roots of the roots of the roots, and I've talked to plenty of Ukrainian comrades and plenty of Russian comrades, we even had a very astute, very famous Russian Marxist come on the show and talk to us about it. Mm-hmm. I've heard many differing perspectives, both from Marxists, but even from right-wingers, etc., etc. I believe I know quite a bit about the history of that particular part of the world. I hang out with people from that particular part of the world almost on a daily basis. So I'm not just pulling this out of my ass and trying to say that I am being completely objective, which objectivity does not exist, but you get my point. I am my opinion on this topic comes from the experience that I've heard that people have had, their opinions on it, people from that part of the world, and also my own, be it Marxist and historical education. And I made a whole video on it, but TLDR, the easiest explanation is the following: there is not really a lot of work that has ever been done on the consequences of the destruction of a socialist or semi-socialist system in a particular country, because it only happened basically once in 1989, when most, like 90% of socialist experiments all over the world, you like them, you don't like them, we can have a discussion, that doesn't matter. But we had almost 90% of all socialist experiments crumble before us. And when it comes to, for example, the crumbling of Yugoslavia, an internationalist socialist project, we immediately saw the newly born states fight for how big of a piece of the previous federative republic they can take. And the direct consequence of the falling of Yugoslavia was 10 to 11 years of horrible inter-capitalist, inter-ethnic warfare that led to over 150,000 deaths, etc., etc. What we have seen with the USSR is a postponement of said conflicts because of different on-the-ground material conditions that did not allow them to happen, number one. Number two, because of the lasting influence of the biggest republic in the USSR over different new republics that have been spawned out of the USSR, because of the incredibly tightly knit interconnection of the economies of those republics, which was not as important in the smaller countries of Yugoslavia, which were already getting much more funds from the West, etc., to fight each other, blah, blah, blah. Because of many factors, basically what I'm saying is this conflict that was inevitable was frozen in time. And in 2014, when the big discussion of what do we do with this part of the country that does not want to pursue the European path, but identifies more with the Russian Federation,
Donbass,
Donbass, and Crimea, the two countries, the way every issue in this neoliberal hellhole that we live in, the only way you can actually solve an international problem without for which you cannot find a common ground is obviously war. And why can you not find a common ground? Because in non-internationalist projects, meaning nation states, you literally cannot. You must represent the interests of your own ethnicity over the interests of another. That is just the ideological underpinning of how a nation state works. And you can very often, just like it was seen in the Yugoslav wars, even here, you can hear out literally both sides. And I'm not being both-siding this or whatever, but you can hear, okay, these people have the right to self-determination and shit. They want to talk their own fucking language. They want to have their own fucking territory. And then the other guys say, but this is the sovereignty of my country. You can't just fucking cut up stuff and take it away, right? And then 700 other arguments that everybody throws at each other after they drink 3 fucking vodkas, but it always leads to the only one manageable way of solving territorial disputes, which is direct conflict. And it led to, back in 2014, and now the proliferation of said war back in February of last year. And I am scoping that all up in probably some smarter people than me are going to write tomes and tomes of books on this in the future. The literal consequences of the destruction of an internationalist project lead to this. We just have not really had it happen in the socialist context. You know, we had the Roman Empire fall apart, this empire, that empire, but those are empires. We never had a socialist internationalist project where, you know, Ukrainian, the Russian, the Belarusian, the Kazakh, etc., were brothers and they were sitting on the same table and eating the same meal. The Serb, the Croat, the Bosnian, the Macedonian, etc., are doing the same. We never had that table being broken, so we didn't know where it's going to lead. Everybody was hoping that the USSR is not going to go the direction of Yugoslavia, but not. The consequences of the destruction of socialism in a particular country are this. multiple capitalist states which do not align, whose interests do not align, and they have to resolve those interests with machine guns and bombs.
It's interesting because like it's almost funny to see how different countries, especially in Latin America, are positioning themselves against this conflict. And of course the material analysis and the historical analysis is fundamental to make any sense. You have to understand the rimland, motherland, the geopolitical strategic significance of that region around the world. The current and emerging necessity for raw materials and the productions and their relationship to the current means of production that we have dominating the region. But it's almost strange to see them fight over if we align with Putin because he's anti-imperialist, and we know that the expansion of NATO is leading the conflict, but without the contextual historical analysis of why this region is so complicated and so bellical and even actively bellical. It's almost funny to see people take positions and to see all these leftists in America, and of course understand that they're liberals. And I think this is one of the most upfront readings that people need to do, is that left in America means liberal. That's it. And being very upfront about it, it makes sense. It makes sense for liberals to align with Ukraine. But then it's hard for us to see, for example, a president like Bolsonaro, and he was siding with Putin. And it's almost strange because does he understand the position that he's taking? Even if I trust deeply in Itamaraty, which is the diplomatic arm of the Brazilian government, and they have a very deep political tradition, and they are into geopolitics, and they're super well prepared and well documented intellectuals in the group. But still, see the president of Brazil take a stance in the side of Putin, and see even Trumpists align with Putin, and seeing liberals align with Ukraine, it's so confusing for most people because they don't have the historical context.
Absolutely. It very often it is. I mean, we touched on this, especially when talking about right-wingers previously.
Same.
Very often it's, okay, so the liberals just took the side of Ukraine. So our opinion, because we're fighting the establishment, we're fighting the liberals, should be what? Be against Ukraine. It's just if the Republicans sucked on the Ukraine titty first, then they would have been, pro-Ukraine. But they didn't jump on that train fast enough, and now they have to be against it, even though they sometimes don't even know how to properly explain why. Just like the liberals, they can rarely properly explain why they're for Ukrainians. Articles everywhere. I am learning Ukrainian because this is how you fight for a better world, or I am tattooing the Ukrainian flag on my fucking butt cheeks. It's the classical. It's a nice fuckfest to watch from the sides as a communist. I'll just say that. I just feel shitty for the people of Donbass and Ukraine and everything, but hey, it's the worker that always gets shafted. Right?
So here, man, there's a comment which is actually it just got deleted, but it was going back to this notion that there's a religious aspect, or there's a dogmatic reading to Marxism. So I wanted to discuss with you this relationship between having this messianic notion about revolution and this messianic reading about the superation of capital, because and this is where maybe our conversation is going to get mostly philosophical, which is the field of study that I enjoy the most. Is that what is your interpretation between the dialectic relationship between ideas and material conditions? Like how does that relationship actually take place? Like if we identify that idealism is one of the core enemies from Marxism because of what it ends up promoting, essentialism, like utopism and these metaphysical notions to lead the world instead of material conditions, how do we take our stance into our own ideological stance, which is the relationship between ideal superstructures and material basis? How do ideas change the world? That's my question to you.
Yeah, well, in order to determine how ideas change the world, we need to determine how ideas come to be. And many would argue that ideas come as a spark in the dark and it's what drives progress, it's what drives existence, etc., etc. So then we need to ask, okay, where does this spark potentially come from? Is it something that is just embedded in us, or is it a consequence of previous life experiences that you've had? Plenty of actual research has gone into this particular topic, and the conclusion basically is that it's a 50-60 or 60-40, a combination of your life experiences and your genetic code, quite literally, that makes you who you actually are. Even if it was 10% environment, and it's not, it's between 60 and 50 depending on the study that you read.
So you're arguing,
yep.
you're arguing that 50 to 60% of where ideas come from is contextual.
Of who you are,
of who you are,
what job will you want to do, what type of partner will you want to date or marry or have kids with, or are you going to want to have kids with? Do you like red or blue? Do you prefer a BMW over an Audi? Do you paint your apartment walls in gray or white or pink?
Contextual.
Those are all how we see the world, what we think, etc., etc. Our literal mind is 50 to 60% created by the previous experiences that we've had. And why is this relevant to the conversation of ideas? Indirectly, ideas. Therefore, if 50 to 60% of everything that you think and know and understand come from the environment, and the environment is dictated by the material and systematic structure that it exists in. Therefore, the material structure, the system you operate in will influence the type of ideas
you're able to have.
That you're able to have. Absolutely. We cannot even comprehend what kind of even metaphysical ideas we will be able to have in a alternate system to that of capitalism. Similar to how you had individuals that were mind-blowing, like, I don't know, Da Vinci thinking up a fucking helicopter, but for like 99.99999% of people, that's that the divine spark didn't happen because the spark isn't fucking divine. It is a network of fucking neurons going off because you had just the right event after event after event after event happened in your life that led to you thinking up this particular thing. So at the end of the day, I don't think they are necessarily always as antagonistic as we like, as a lot of comrades like to put them out to be. Is the world created by ideas, or is the world dictated and created by the material conditions? Because one kind of influences the other.
Yeah, so that's the dialectical reading of the relationship between material basis and idealistic superstructure. But I wanted to really pinpoint into your reading about, okay, so what you explained to us is how the material conditions and other non-material conditions produce ideal superstructures. So how do those ideal superstructures feed back or change material conditions?
Great question. Well, I would. So that they become problematic once they, an idea, an idea which is not limited by the walls of material reality can grow much more beautifully and grow much more expansively and widely than one that is limited by the walls.
Yes, Spinoza.
But unfortunately, at one point, the daydreaming about the potentially impossible but much more beautiful future becomes much more intriguing to you than what you get to create inside of your four walls of material reality. So what I'm basically trying to say is, what unfortunately idealism greatly hurts the socialist movement in general, because it very innocently proposes, yes, some absolutely mind-blowing fucking shit, but this shit is just simply
it should not be compared to the shit that materialists propose, because it is within the realms of reality, and therefore idealism as like kind of a nice conversation point, a play on what this future non-hierarchical world after we go through 25 fucking revolutions, etc., is going to look
Like a
like.
post-communist
Yeah.
organization.
No, even communists. Like,
Oh my God.
we don't even know. Maybe the proletariat is not going to be the final class.
Yeah.
After the
like
overthrow.
we were having a conversation just before going into air, and this is insane because people don't see it. We were having this conversation, Hugo and I, just before we went live, talking about the AI being a potential new class that will eventually come into class struggle with the actual living fleshly composed proletariat, and we're going to have another revolution, class struggle between the AI proletariat and the actual flesh living proletariat. That's why I think most of the people, what they struggle with and what they think is wrong is when you take a dogmatic Marxist position and you take Marxism as the end of history, which is also a non-Marxist reading of Marx.
Totally non-Marxist. It pisses me.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got that. I lose my mind.
Yeah,
Yes,
I know. That's why I think people are so stupid to do this, because criticizing like that is a non-Marxist take on Marx. And it's completely a straw man. And it's so easy to pinpoint people that criticize Marx without reading it. Because, of course, if you take a non-Marxist reading on Marx, it feels like Marx is giving an end of history prediction. And he's not. He couldn't be further away from that. But then again, if a Marxist take a non-Marxist position, he should also be criticized, because if you oppose the dialectical process in history, you're taking a non-Marxist reading of Marx.
Yes. Yes,
it's a pity. So going to the last piece of this, Hugo, and now that we spoke about the role, and I think it leads perfectly, talking about the role of how ideas change the world. You describe yourself as a propagandist. So and I love that. It's not a critique. I really like the notion. So how do you come to this conclusion, or how would you describe the type of work that you are doing? How do you feel your work is important, necessary, or other people should have inspiration from you and also join this creation of class consciousness via the creation of propaganda in the notion of bringing people closer to this realization of alienation?
Well, you just said it very beautifully. It is the bringing of people closer to the realization of just how alienated they are.
Sorry.
And through it, no, perfectly, no, absolutely, thank you. And that leading to the development of internal class consciousness. But why do I use this particular term? Because I've always wondered what my exact spot is inside of the global socialist movement, which is absolutely everywhere and at all times and invisible and visible. Jesus, we sound like a cult. But no, jokes aside.
Just as a parenthesis, have you heard the Walter Benjamin reading about the Mechanical Turk?
No.
Oh, it's super interesting. It's a super interesting topic because it was an article, a text written by Walter Benjamin, trying to come up with a relationship between dialectical materialism and religion. And of course, he was from the Judeo tradition, and he was talking about dialectical materialism is there's a mechanical Turk playing chess under the table, and you think like you're playing chess against a robot, but the robot is actually being controlled by a genius level chess player. Right?
I love that. I love.
So there's a relationship between dialectical materialism and this sense of prophetic messianity in the happening of history. The fact that there's a dialectical overcoming of opposition, of paradoxes that lead to the synthesis of history. This is the more traditional dialectical reading. But what is cool about this relationship is that there's a hidden aspect under the table that we don't necessarily understand, and those are the unaccounted for variables that take subtle effects in the systematic process of history that end up producing the result that we read as dialectical materialism. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that was perfect. But and when I looked at, as always, when we try to find our place in any sort of movement or any even hierarchy or organization or whatever, we tend to, unless we have something that exists right in front of us, which right now there is nothing. I mean, revolution is always active and always exists, and it is always in motion,
Ongoing.
and it is always moving towards it. But the only way you can kind of it always changes and modifies it, and the only way you can kind of really find where you are at in it is when you look at historical examples. And a guy screaming in a microphone on YouTube or in a podcast, which is what I basically fucking do, it looked the most like, the leaflet writers and makers of the, French Revolution, Soviet Revolution, etc., etc. The quite literal propagandists, the maker of posters, the guys on the corners that are screaming, etc., etc. We are basically serving that purpose, but obviously capitalism even tries to commodify that, blah blah blah. But we'll leave that conversation for another time.
It's insane, no? That we get paid to produce content against capital. It's so strange. As a system, it's so counterintuitive. Like, people have to be really careful about these readings because. No, please go ahead.
Go on. Go.
No, that is interesting when you give a philosophical, like a systematic philosophical reading of capitalism as this logic of systems, in the sense that it's so efficient in monetizing transactions and human relations that it can even monetize and reward some social relationships that could be originally interpreted as subversive.
Exactly. They will. I mean, it's so amazing that how is the brain on this motherfucker. But okay, let's not prophetize him. But they will sell us the rope we will hang them with.
Oh yeah. I love that sentence. That's one of my favorite.
But there's another aspect of it which, the conversation about when it comes to consuming media en masse, does the feeling of consuming socialist media make you feel like you've actually done something?
Anti-revolutionary feeling, no?
Yeah. So like, that's my worst nightmare. Like I would, no, I literally cannot say this on Twitch what I would do if I found out like that this is how I'm not contributing but hurting the movement. That would
exactly.
And this I'm just hoping I'm not.
Man, 100%. That's my fear. Like that, our work is taken as an anti-revolutionary placebo.
Yeah. Oh, anti-revolutionary placebo. Man, we could write a book on this. I'm not even fucking kidding. No, seriously. And it's difficult to write because you need to be in this world, which is so fucking tiny. We're the communist content creators, maybe 100 on planet Earth, right?
It's like, insane. By the way, I wanted to ask your opinion because I'm compared a lot to this guy in the US, Hassan Piker. And I don't feel I share a lot of political positions with Hassan, even if I agree with some of his analysis. I think the guy is entertaining, but the guy became like a media monster in the US, didn't he?
Yes, but I really like him. We all serve our purpose
on the pipeline.
On the funnel, on the pipeline, on the funnel, whatever you want to call it.
I agree.
And he serves it really well because compared to other people with a lot of other people with massive platforms, and not only other people with massive platforms, but more importantly, people that hide their power level, because he hides his power level, as it said, but a lot of other content creators don't. But what am I'm going in circles. Sorry. What I'm trying to say, a lot of people want to create, especially streamers, they want to create a tight-knit community and then keep the community because that's what feeds them. And when you're propagating socialism, it leads to reactionary thought. Why? Because if you want to keep that tight-knit community, you cannot allow them to radicalize further.
Yeah.
Because then they will go and watch
away
another
from
guy
you.
or read another guy away from you.
Yeah, they're gonna
does not do that.
Exactly.
Does not do that. And that's why I think he's a great force for good. Fucking, he should enjoy his fucking money, enjoy his life, whatever.
No, I agree 100%.
Radicalizing so many people.
Yeah.
I have utmost respect.
No, 100%. And I think it was Dao Seping that said that getting rich is glorious. And I agree. Like, I mean, I'm like, I don't know if you're familiar with these 7 divisions of leftist movement, of historical leftist movements, which is from a Spanish school, from the Gustavo Bueno School of Thought. He's a philosopher from Spain. And he has divided the leftist movements around history in 7 main streams, which are very interesting. And the 6th one is the Asian one, like the Asian reading, Asian MLs, like Marxist-Leninists. And I think like their relationship with capital is something very interesting, especially to us in Latin America. Like I would love to take a lot from the learnings and the history of the Chinese tradition of Marxist-Leninism and see that we have a lot to learn from them and a lot that we could immediately apply to our economies in Latin America.
Absolutely. Why not? Yeah.
Yeah.
We need as many fucking experiments as we potentially can have. That's why both of the camps kind of piss me off. Like the ultra fanboys that say this is the only path to establishing socialism, or the other guys that are like hating on absolutely every single experiment because
Not pure enough or
this,
whatever.
This or that fucking flaw.
I agree.
Like you won't even be able to walk the 5 stairs to get out of your mom's basement with opinions like that. Let alone start a fucking revolution.
So many Marxist cosplayers. It's ridiculous. Oh my God. People just rejoice on this notion that they're cosplaying philosophy or cosplaying those dogmatic ideas without being able to look into themselves. It's insane, man.
And there's these 2 beautiful tribes, and I guess it depends on what type of like psychoanalytic profile you have. You are either a massive hater of absolutely every try of socialism, or you're a massive fanboy. You're like sucking dicks right and left of every single like president or marshal or
it's cool. It's cool that you mentioned psychoanalysis. It's one of my favorite topics as well. And it's interesting because like I tend to resist identifying as anything because I know the danger of falling into master signifier categories. And I it's so glad that you understand. It's so nice that we can have these conversations. It's hard to find people to talk to about this, but it's true. Like what I see mostly online is cosplaying. Cosplaying is like the pop word to say that people have over-identified with a master signifier, and they're super comfortable, and they're just like this master signifier gives me all my meaning. I need nothing else. I have to, in a way, adapt my behavior to this master signifier, and that's it. Hugo, I don't know if you felt off. I don't know what happened. Oh my God, did we lost Hugo? I think he's gonna have to connect again. A ver, racilla, se me hace que se me cayó el buen Hugo. Ojalá y todo bien en su casa. Déjame checar. Control V. Everything, ok. Híjole, güey. Acaba de pasar algo con el buen Hugo allá. A ver qué pasó, güey. Oh, puta madre. A lo mejor se tenía que desconectar el vato, güey. Ni pedos. Digo, qué rara manera de terminar una gran entrevista. Pero de todas formas, no se preocupen. De todas formas, un tipazo. O sea, booted me. A ver, güey. What the fuck. Control V. Let me see. Control V. There you go. There you go. Déjame ver si se vuelve a conectar. Aquí está. Show on stream.
Hello?
My friend, I think the CIA is on to us.
Just booted me. Literally booted me.
The police is here.
I'm not even fucking kidding. The tab closed.
Yeah.
In front of my eyes. It's just like,
no, you guys are making too much sense. We need to stop this. Yeah.
Sorry, what were we talking about?
I have no idea. Nothing is more important than that joke, so it makes no sense for us to dwell into the past.
Okay.
No, just kidding. So, man, not to take too much advantage of your time, and I know it's already 15 past the time we agree upon. So tell us a little bit about the Deprogram podcast so we can already start promoting in the conversation we're going to have soon on your talk show.
Yes. So the Deprogram podcast is a internationalist socialist project ran by 3 people from literally 3 corners of the world. One is in good old Texas, one is in good old Iraq, and I am in bad old the Balkans.
What part of the Balkans, to be honest with you? Don't worry, I'm not going to send the CIA.
No. I try to keep it anonymous because everybody hates each other.
Oh, right? My God.
If I say I'm this one nationality,
okay.
all the other motherfuckers are going to hate my guts. Okay. But at this point, people are kind of getting what ethnicity I am.
Don't worry. Don't say.
I live also in the Balkans, but in another Balkan country.
Okay, cool. Close enough.
It really confuses like haters that are like, I don't know, because it probably confuses yours as well because you're a Brazilian and in Mexico.
Mexico, yeah.
So a lot of haters say, man, stop talking about like local issues, bro. You don't even fucking live here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But
yes.
You're in Mexico. It's not like you're in the US or in fucking England, right?
Yeah, nationalities are metaphysical. Like, why are you guys fighting? Nationalities are fucking metaphysical. The working class is global.
Absolutely. But that doesn't stop them from making lovely, lovely little rude remarks.
Sorry,
But yeah, that's the
interrupted,
program. Diego is going to come, I believe, in 2 days. We're going to have some fantastic conversations about ideology, about South America, about other stuff. And I guess we can continue because I just remembered people LARPing as Marxists. That is
cosplaying, or even not only as Marxist. I think that cosplay political position has become dominant. Like most of the time, what you see is people that they defend a cosplay, they defend a costume, a disguise,
an aesthetic,
but they don't. Yeah, exactly, an aesthetic. They take politics as an aesthetics, which is exactly the opposite of what I'm trying to do. Like normally, what I try to do all the time, and I tell these people that are in the chat and that follow me on my different channels, is that all the time I'm trying to politicize aesthetics, because aesthetics have political implications, and we have to be aware that aesthetic decisions always come with implied political decisions behind. And I think like most of the time, political positions are only aesthetical. Like people are over-identifying with superior meanings and master signifiers, and they just use those as the current brand or the current trend or the current, consumption motive, and they tab into the narrative and they feel that they belong and they identify, they virtual signal, and it's so much easier, to take a political stance as an aesthetic position.
Absolutely. Beautifully put.
It's a pity, my man. Well, Hugo, thank you so much for the conversation, man. It was a real pleasure. Already the moderators were super nice, and they were linking the Deprogram podcast on the chat and your networks as well. What else can we expect from you? What type of projects are you personally working on the moment?
Thank you for taking the time to have me on.
Absolutely.
Please do share all the links once you upload them. I'll share the shit out of them everywhere.
Awesome.
This was an absolute pleasure.
Same.
You are very, very, very bright, very well read. This was very fun. When it comes to my new projects, obviously the Deprogram currently, funny enough, I have like a mini series of aesthetics of evil that I've been kind of on pause for a year. And now I'm working on another episode regarding it. If you have any other ideas about aesthetics of evil, please do reach out. I want to spread it out a bit more outside of just talking about Nazis and fascists, but right now I'm there because it's very, very intriguing.
If I may, just one suggestion on the topic, which I think is right on point. Have you read this beautiful article called Necrocapitalism, which is the aesthetics of dead in production?
Oh, what the fuck? No, send it to me, please.
You should, man. Just look. It's a free article. It's going to be actually number 1 or number 2 link in Google. It's called Necrocapitalism. It was written by a Singaporean indie author.
Oh no.
Yeah, super nice. I think it fits directly into this notion of the aesthetics of evil. It's gonna perfect.
Sick. There you go. It's the most profitable interview I've ever been on in my life.
Come on.
Got so much out of it. I'm not even kidding.
Please.
No, thank you once again for your time. Anybody want to check out my shit? Yugopnik on YouTube. Just write the Deprogram on Google for the podcast. And you'll see Diego there soon.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to my stupid ramblings. I have no idea why I'm even here. But
come on, and you guys should really go check out Hugo's channel on YouTube. There are some videos there that are absolutely amazing. The one about having optimism as a proletariat is incredible.
I'm proud of that.
Class consciousness on the workplace. Oh my god, beautiful! Like such cool videos. Like easygoing, deep theory, easy to understand, like right at the level where I think we should engage with the working class. Because most of the time, I think my main issue is that I over-theorize aspects of the proletariat movement, and I make things a little bit too complicated for a lot of people. And I don't know if that is egoism, narcissism, or my lack of ability to simplify my own ideas, but I think where you engage people is so interesting. I'm only going to steal from you the idea that each of us play a different role in the pipeline. So I would like to think that I play my own part in some aspect of that pipeline that I'm not completely responsible for.
You definitely do, and you do something that is even more important, which, for example, I do not do, is play a significant role in radicalizing people in your own part of the world. I make content in English, and I mostly, feed into radicalizing in some German, French, British, or American dude. You also creating content in Spanish. I don't know if you do in Portuguese.
Yep.
Is super, super, super fucking important.
Yeah.
Because it's different when you're listening to a local talk about this shit than some guy over in fucking Wisconsin or some shit.
But then again, Hugo, to play on your side, I think, like, for example, the fact that your voice, even the way you speak, the fact that you live in the Balkans, it's also that was very important for me to bring you on board and have a conversation with you, because I think specifically those topics and the Balkans as a very conflictive region, part of Rimlands, historically very complicated part of the world. It's important that this side of the world get different points of view and a more rigorous material reading of what's happening and why is it happening. So guys, if I was able to produce one piece of curiosity in all of you in this video, is to go and check out Hugo's work and the type of work that he does and the theory he engages with and his political notion and his points of view. And we're going to continue this conversation in the Deep Program podcast very, very soon. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the subscriptions and the comments. And I will see you guys this afternoon to comment on the Brazilian elections in Portuguese. And we're going to be reviewing and reacting live to the speech from Lula's Brazil president and the currently ongoing farce and comedy of the invasion of government buildings in Brazil. Thank you guys very much. I'm going to cut it right here and we'll see you soon very, very quickly. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.